Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our next April webinar. I hope you are all doing well and healthy and safe wherever you might be in isolation, quarantine, or just hanging out, reading books. But one of my commitments definitively during this period of time is to keep your mind in the most creative mode possible and to keep you in a optimistic mindset about what is possible, because we're living again during the most extraordinary time ever in human history, and how we think about this time is as critically important as what we do. So rather than have a continuing conversation on COVID-19, I'm super psyched to bring an incredible guest and friend to our conversation today for our live webinar to talk about future of work, talk about artificial intelligence, emotional intelligence, the future of learning, and a conversation hopefully that will get you engaged in what is possible and how do you think about learning yourself and deploying learning through your startups and your companies to all of your users. So Jos Dirkx, Jos, welcome.
Thanks so much, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening to you. Good morning to me. Jos is in the southern part of the Netherlands. What's the name of the small town that you're in?
So the small town that I'm in is called Valkenburg, which is very close to the Belgian and the German borders. It's really in the south of the Netherlands, but it's lovely here, Peter. You must come visit. We do a lot of bike riding. We do a lot of climbing, a lot of walking. So it's really, really nice. It's not the worst place to be right now. So I do count my blessings.
So you're quarantined in paradise. Nice.
Nature.
So let me do a proper introduction of Jos, who is an incredible person. And so Jos Dirkx is CEO and co-founder of Binova AI, faculty member at Singularity University, international public speaker, author, world traveler, originally from the Netherlands and now based there. Jos is born in Brazil and has since lived in 12 countries around the world. And I guess you visited as many as 100. You are, I think of myself as a power traveler, but I think I'm standing still compared to you. Jos founded an award-winning organization in South Africa and co-launched a mobile health app, provides free daily health information. Jos is passionate about technology, creativity, and building scalable solutions for the changing world. At Binova AI, she works with an incredible team to change how the world learns. Her company teaches and measures future skills by providing personalized learning mentors. So let's first jump in and we'll get to everybody's questions, but let's unpack this a little bit. Talk about the future of learning and what are you excited about? What's the vision that you've been sort of building and now building a company on top of?
Thanks so much, Peter. So first of all, thank you to you and your team. I really appreciate being here. I've been watching so many of the videos all day and just loving, all the topics, and it's been really amazing. So super excited to be here. The work that we're doing is, I believe, very much 21st century focused and very targeted to the changing world. So what we've done is we're building personalized AI mentors so that every single learner around the world has their own tutor that essentially lives in their back pocket. And we do this because self-learning, lifelong learning, understanding how the world is changing, and the 21st century skills are really key for upskilling and reskilling. And we have got such a changing world right now, rapid technology changes. Now with COVID-19, we know that there are big shifts that are happening. And for us, it's really important to make sure that these scalable and sustainable solutions reach every single learner. So how we've built Binova is around that AI and EI intersection and making learning available to everybody, essentially.
So let's double click on this. First of all, you use the term EI. Can you expand on what that means?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, EI is emotional intelligence, and the way that we really take emotional intelligence seriously is because we believe that skills like creativity and resilience and the ability to collaborate and the ability to be self-aware, to self-teach are super important in the 21st century. So that kind of way of thinking largely influences the work that we do. Healthy minds allow us to build healthy bodies, allow us to have productive and healthy relationships. But these are not skills that we currently even touch on in the education system, in most education systems. So for us, this is a real priority when it comes to learning, because knowing these skills allows you to prepare yourself for the future of work.
So when you're talking about an AI mentor, I mean, one of the things that I teach and write about is the the dematerialization, demonetization, and democratization of products and services. And one of these services is education, is learning. And the question is, if I'm super wealthy, I can afford for my kids or for myself the best tutors in the world, educators in the world who understand how I learn, because we all learn differently, and then deliver super personalized, customized learning to me. And is that the vision then with Benova?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that, Peter, because there shouldn't be a gap between who has access to those skills and who doesn't. For that, so that's number one. But secondly, we also know that there was a study that showed that 57% of employees across companies surveyed in 2019 wished that they had one-on-one coaching, wished that they had access to somebody to mentor them and to really get into their learning journey. Now, we know that this is impossible. Even for the biggest companies, that's an unsustainable investment. So we know that, yes, AI has its limitations, but we also understand how we can strategically use AI to help everybody unlock a little bit more of their potential in each of the steps of their learning journey.
So help me understand what this would look like. How would this work? You said it's something that layers on top of existing platforms and such.
Yeah.
And and you're really at a point where you're just almost ready to launch your product, but talk about the vision of where we'll be in maybe 5 years. How does it look for me to be using the AI mentor that you're creating?
I love that question. It actually really excites me because that's where we actually see everything come to life. So our product is up and running. We've deployed it for clients already, and we're ready to go. How we've built is that we're built onto existing platforms. So that saves a school or a company a lot of time with regards to installation and integration, et cetera. And it means that we can immediately deploy. And how it looks and feels is the tutor is called Ira. And Ira takes you on your daily learning journey and says, hi, Peter, how are you doing today? Because the first thing that we want to do is an emotional check-in. We want to know, where's your head at? How's your mindset? Are you ready to turn up and deliver against your full potential today? And if not, let's talk about why not. So in addition to grabbing that emotional state that you're in, we want to get you to a state where you're ready to absorb. So if you're feeling proud, we leverage that. If you're feeling anxious, we can offer a meditation or a suggestion to take a walk if, we're all out again and there's no isolation. But essentially, we want to make sure that we get that mindset piece right. Then we grab all kinds of interactions that the human is doing with the AI so we can really understand what kind of person you are. And then we start serving learning content to upskill you for the future of work. And that's against 21st century skills. And the 21st century skills is an actual framework that we can use strategically to build capacity for jobs that we don't even know exist yet. And the great thing about this is that it's categorized from an individual perspective, myself against society, with society, how to develop IT skills, how to develop creativity skills. So there's a wide range of different skills that are actually tracked and measured so that we can continuously improve someone's progress against this future of work.
So Ira is coming to me through my phone, through my platform, and once it does an emotional check-in, what is it? I mean, what type of content is it, or do you expect to be teaching and sort of upskilling people with?
We believe that the most strategic way there's so much great content out there, right, Peter? Yeah. It's not necessarily following a 4-hour MOOC or, really, it doesn't always have to be where it's super deep. What we try to do is really get people to critically think about content and understand how it can impact the world around them. And that's for everybody, because everybody's born naturally curious. Everybody's born a natural leader. So what we want to do is to get people critically thinking about, okay, wait a second. How does this piece on leadership skills actually affect me and my team in this crisis today? How do I take ownership over this piece of content? What are the 7 skills I can do right now to make sure that I enhance the way that I turn up? So we do that online and offline. Of course, now it's more online given the state of the world, but we also believe that interaction offline is really important. You know, Peter, you might get a piece that says, share this with 3 people that you meet today and ask for their opinion. So we start building interactivity and we start building those conversational skills and grabbing ideas from different sources as well.
So we have entrepreneurs from around the world who are different stages of their startup. Let's just, I always love hearing the startup story and how you built what you built, and then we'll come back to how it can be used. So how did you get into the AI space? Is it AI for you as a tool or a programmer? Give me a little bit of that history, and let's talk about the aha moment of this is needed, and I'm going to create this company. Finding your co-founder, capitalizing your team. Let's walk through that story a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So how I met my co-founder, and you might really like this, is I was at a conference in Greece.
How long ago was this?
This was in 2018, in October 2018.
Okay.
And this conference is so fun, Peter, because it's like a summer camp for adults, and you can sign up for different activities. And I always do the band because I love to sing and I love music and I love arts. So I was the singer of the band and my co-founder was the guitarist. And we ended up chatting. Exactly. We ended up chatting. He's actually Greek. He's amazing. He's absolutely genius. And I was telling him a little bit, in between rehearsals, you get 3 days to rehearse a full set. So it's amazing. And I was like sharing with him this passion I have for education and how I grew up and the things that I saw and what can we do. And he was like, well, I really love AI. And he had a previous company, and he was like, look, why don't we think about what we can do with your creative spirit here and my technical know-how? Let's see what we can build together. So we really started building then. And I just feel so grateful now because we've got a team of people around us that also have the same passion for building better systems, building better solutions. So we're very driven and motivated by that. And it shows in our product. It shows in the way that we engage with one another. So since then we started building, and we realized that, first of all, human-based technology for us is key. We wanted to really get a human sense to the AI, like a conscious AI, building a more supportive journey with the learner on the other side.
Was something, was there a model that you were looking at? Was Iron Man a sort of a vision? Did you have a science fiction model of the type of AI you wanted to build?
He may have. I think his favorite author is Sagan. I don't know, Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
For me, it's more my drive came from knowing that I'd launched a mobile health app, and then I wrote a book that was about real girls around the world, 11 girls that are changing the world. One has a solution for Parkinson's disease. The other sailed around the world when she was 14. These incredible kids doing incredible things. And we made an AR, augmented reality kids coloring book. So I was always thinking about how can we use technology to just bring learning further. Mm-hmm. And then his ideas around AI really helped create that structure that we needed to make sure that this is sustainable and scalable. And of course, there's different combinations and different algorithms, and much of our own thinking went into building the algorithm, and we know it's going to improve. Obviously, we're going to see so much exponential growth over the next while, which I'm very excited about. But for us, it was really about getting that base right and understanding how human interaction from a learning perspective can really help us shape AI-based education solutions.
So the company's about a year old now. How many employees do you have in the organization? How many folks do you have working on the project?
We're with 10 of us.
10 of you. And how has it changed over the original idea to meeting reality and serving people's needs?
That's an awesome question. We went in with service for others at our base. So really thinking about what do people need in their hands right now to upskill? What do we need to get people right now? So how it's changed, I think, is we got a lot more methodological about our approach regarding assessment. So we know that there's a lot of talk about the future of work and these future skills, but we noticed a gap in the market from an assessment perspective, and we wanted to help fill that gap. So if
Interesting.
I'm a 2.3 creativity today, how can I get myself to a 3.0? How can I get better at these skills? So that's been a real product development for us and understanding how we need to retrain our models and look at the algos in more depth to make sure that we could close those gaps.
And I mean, especially now where we're going to see a large population of unemployed individuals who need to really probably retool themselves, right? One of the things that goes on during an economic crisis like this, where you have a 30% drop, is you have a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of unemployment. The companies that were just barely surviving die, but we also see a period of extraordinarily rapid creativity, right? So for everybody watching, one of the upsides of what's going on right now is just like post after the 2008 crisis, we saw the birth of Airbnb and WhatsApp and Uber and Venmo and dozens of other extraordinary companies that came out of this intense Darwinian evolution, right? So actually a better analogy I like to use is the asteroid impact. So 66 million years ago, an asteroid strikes the planet. It changes the environment so rapidly that the large, slow, lumbering dinosaurs, because of the rapid change of environment, cannot survive and they go extinct. And the furry mammals that are agile and moving quickly are able to fill the open niches. So what we're seeing right now, the equivalent of the asteroid, is the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's causing a death of a large number, and we'll see a number of companies that have been just hanging on go out of business, and then the intellectual resources, the capital resources will get reapplied, and we'll see a rapid evolution of a higher, more efficient form of company life, if you would. But upskilling is going to be required in that regard, as well as partnership between humans and AI in that regard. Are you looking to serve that unemployed, upskillable marketplace as well?
I think it's a great question. For us, what matters most is now our model works through a B2B model, in the sense that we have to have those relationships with corporates, with companies, with schools, with educational institutions. But at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that as many people have the skills that either allow them to be entrepreneurial themselves and paint their entire own journey, or get their hands on the educational material that they need. And actually, sometimes I think about it this way, Peter. If we think about report cards, even, it's in a way, it's such an outdated way of thinking about learning or the value that we bring. So for us, it's really about okay, these are the ways that I can turn up with these skills in my back pocket. And I personally believe, and it's something that we strive to do at Binova, is to make sure that everybody has that opportunity.
So I think one of the questions I would ask all of our digital members to be thinking for themselves is, do you have the skills that you need for the way the world is going to change coming out of this global slowdown and this transformation? So, ultimately, one of the reasons that we built Abundance Digital was to be able to have conversations like this that get you to think, but also to give you a set of extraordinary educational content across the Abundance platform and Singularity University, to give yourselves the cutting edge for the exponential world we're going into. How do you have any sense, Jos, on how you see the world changing coming out of post COVID-19 pandemic? What are you seeing? What's the conversations you're having?
I love that question. maybe my answer would change on a day-to-day basis, because what I'm loving is seeing people go into their creative selves. And, both of us are travelers. And to have a moment where we can't travel, for me, it's like, and I think for you as well, it's such a beautiful time to create.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are getting back in touch with some of those pieces that they might not have been using as much as they should. And that's where real innovation happens, and that's where real creativity happens, and we can actually build things of value. So it's a real break, a real breather that we're getting. And I choose to honor that with my team every single day. Can I say that having a startup in the age of Corona is like a walk in the park? No, of course not. But are we making the most of it every single day? We absolutely are, because we realize that coming out of this, we have two options. One, it's to thrive, or one, it's to completely not have taken this opportunity and turn it into something magnificent. So for us, we believe that continuously building, serving our clients and the world even more so now, is the best that we can do. How I hope the world comes out of it is more quiet and more conscious.
Yeah.
And finding abilities, to raise the global frequency would be ultimate.
So let me just make this observation for everybody, again, watching us here today, which is uh, there are different times in the economy and in social structure where different leadership skills are valued. There are times when stability is valued. There are times when operationalizing a product or service is valued. And I think more than ever today, one of the leadership skills that is probably the most important is agility and creativity, which goes back to the point you were making, Jos, a few minutes ago, right? So I counsel a large number of CEOs, CMOs, executives, and a lot of them that were in large-scale traditional companies, and it was just steer the battleship, don't make any rough changes. Those companies are not going to thrive and do well. And those that are focused on how do I reinvent, how do I reskill, how do I retool our company to dominate the industry on the flip side of this. In other words, everybody's revenues have gone down, like the airline industry has gone down 90%. And at the end of this, it's not how do you return to normal, but what are you doing right now that's going to reinvent you as a leader in whatever's coming out of this. So you're gaining market share, not trying to regain to the point that you were. But a lot of it is going to be how do we train people to become more creative and more agile? And do you think that's a skill set that can be trained for employees, entrepreneurs, for everybody listening here? Up your creative quotient?
I hope so. I believe so. We're all born with a level of creativity and the ability to play. And creativity is born by asking questions, being curious, and playing. That's how we stay creative. And what we, strive to do is to encourage that creativity and offer the spaces for it to develop as well. And that entrepreneurial spirit, in my travels, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, you'll notice some countries have this natural ability to rely on their population's entrepreneurial spirit. Whereas in other countries, they've never needed it because things were structured enough. And what I really love is seeing those countries where entrepreneurial behavior is at the heart of who the people are, because it always shows that, what, we're ready to innovate. We're ready to create something new. We're ready to reinvent ourselves. We're ready to hear no. And that really helps the way that we build and the way that we shape our future. Now, the amazing thing is that everybody has that opportunity. Everybody has the opportunity to contribute to our new world in a way.
Everybody, please get your questions ready. We'll be going to your questions in just 5 minutes, and obviously posting them in the chat. And Jerem is hoping to monitor all of them, and then we'll be going to those. One of the questions is an AI mentor, and I think of AI mentor. There's a great book by Neil Stephenson, Diamond Age, in which there is the AI called, the young woman's illustrate primer, and it's an AI that is this young woman who's the lead character, and it interacts with her across everything she's doing and makes everything a fun and learning experience. And I think eventually all of us are going to have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man, an AI that you give access to everything you read, everything you hear, all of your interactions, reading all your emails, looking what you're eating, listening to your conversations. And that version of Jarvis is going to make your life auto-magical in that regard. One question is your AI mentor just auditory right now? Do you have a vision that it would be visual as well later on?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've talked about it when we have our product debriefs. Yeah, we've thought about it, like how can we start to look at humans' behavior on that level? But for now, from an accessibility perspective, and from where AI is at as well, we do the engagement one-on-one. Yeah, but it's something interesting for us to keep considering for sure.
And how do you think about privacy in this regard? And this is a conversation I'm sparking up with the digital community here. One of the elements is the reality of, do we have privacy, and the desire for privacy, and the question of, does privacy really exist, and what are the trades that we make as we let an AI into our life, understanding what we want to learn, interacting with it all the time. But how do you think about privacy, Jos?
That's a great question. It's a big deal, and we've noticed shifts happen already where we feel much more comfortable handing over information or handing over our data. Let's just say I can see the difference between myself and my dad. We have a different idea about this. At the end of the day, it's a very personal decision. I do believe that we have to be mindful of how we train AI to be good, to be conscious, to be happy, to be productive. And there I do, it's a discussion that we need to keep having. And I can see different governments are trying to shape their regulations around it, their restrictions. But when something is evolving so quickly, it's hard to pinpoint every single law about it at the same time. I think these are questions that we'll be able to answer as we go. But in the meantime, we have to do our best, all of us working in this space, to make sure that we can create healthy and happy relationships with the technology that we're building.
Awesome. Well, I've got a bunch more questions, but I'll pepper them in. Jerem, if it's okay with you, let's go ahead and start taking questions from our community, and I'll jump in with more along the way.
Sounds good. So Rand here is asking, Jos, what do you think the biggest value that AI can bring to human learning and intelligence enhancement?
Okay, awesome. Thank you for your question. I think your name's Graham, if I heard it correctly, but it's a great question. So from our perspective, where we believe the real value lies is in personalization and in measurement and tracking. So not only are you developing a personalized relationship with your tutor, everybody has access to a personalized tutor, which is great. It's that persona that is with you, but also just the fact that you're able to get a deeper self-awareness. So you have access to the learning that you need, and you are learning skills that you need. So you're fully equipped to build your future in a way that feels fulfilling, that feels good to you, and that gives you that ownership back.
Great. Up next is Rowan, and he says, do you have concerns about the trajectory artificial general intelligence can take over the long term? Is there any downside to this?
Yeah, so let's get into that conversation. Is AI innately good or innately bad? Can you steer it? And I definitely have opinions about that. But Jos, let's get your answer on first.
For every bad, there's good, and for every good, there's bad. So I would like to go from a light and bright and good perspective and have the viewpoint that we're doing this with a conscious and a responsible approach. That's that's the way that, you know, we want to develop what we're doing. I don't want to sit here and be innocent about the fact that there are different ways in which we can use any technology for that matter. It's not necessarily AI. It's possible to build anything to be used in a negative way.
And I think Ron's question is really along the lines of AGI. It's a term Ray Kurzweil doesn't like when I use AGI, but the general concept is versus narrow AI, which is an AI that does a very specific thing, AGI, which is the genie out of the bottle, right? As Elon says, summoning the demons. So the question is, if you have an AI that is intelligent on its own, able to learn on its own, is it a threat to the human race, or is it a net positive to the human race? Is that controllable? Should we be concerned about, put a moratorium on people who are developing AGI? This is a fun conversation. If this is something that everybody in the digital community would like to go more into more detail, there are some really super fun thinkers who are leaders in the AGI space. I can bring to a future webinar, but I agree with you that it's AI. Any tool can be used for good or for bad. The question is the nature of an AGI likely to get out of control and become the terminator of the human race?
Great. Up next, Junaid is wondering how each of you defines a 21st century skill.
Junaid, good question. Jos, you go first.
Sure thing. So Junaid, thanks for your question. 21st century skills are actually defined in a framework by various think tanks and thought leaders. You can find reference points for it across, for example, materials published by the World Economic Forum, and also drawn on research done in a country like, well, actually Finland. Finland has dedicated a lot of time and thinking into structuring really comprehensive education programs. So 21st century skills, these future skills actually have a framework. And to answer your question more specifically, a 21st century skill could be something like creativity or collaboration, adaptability, managing the environment that we're in. So really learning and knowing how to turn up in the 21st century, which now we can see has a lot to do even with resilience. Now, how resilient are we to what our current situation is?
So I agree 100% what you're saying. I think it's less important knowing, because the rate of change is so fast that if you learned a very specific skill, that skill is likely to be out of date or needs to be retooled very quickly. So in some ways, I would say 21st century skills are about agility, about creativity. It's also about the ability to learn a new skill rapidly. One of the things that I think about is getting team members who can ask great questions, who are constantly questioning the status quo, because that's the only way you're reinventing yourself. We're living in a time, one of the things that I wrote about in my last book, The Future is Faster Than You Think, is there's a chapter called The Acceleration of the Acceleration, in which the rate at which technology is accelerating is itself accelerating. And if that's the case, how do you as a human stay surfing on top of the tsunami instead of getting crushed by it? And it's really asking great questions, agility, and the like. And being able to, by the way, partner with tech. I think this next decade is a decade in which those who can collaborate with software and robotics are going to be much more likely to succeed than those that are resistant to that collaboration.
Awesome. George has an interesting question about the Netherlands. He says, what are some of the differences in the startup culture of the Netherlands versus the US or Silicon Valley? And does culture play any role in the way that new businesses are started and scaled over there?
Oh, George, I love your question and I have to come clean. Let me explain to you why I'm in the Netherlands. I was in Dubai, I was in Joburg, I was in Athens, like all over the map. And then COVID-19 happened and I thought, let me get back to my folks and make sure that they're all okay. So I've been here now in the Netherlands for almost 1 month exactly. And I grew up, in 13 different countries. And so we've been really globally inclined from the beginning. So when I do believe that there are differences in the startup culture. I think the Netherlands has a very vibrant and very innovative culture. And we've always been like that, since the 16th century, working with water, working with trade, really trying to understand how we can build systems for a reasonably small country to remain successful and play very strategically and quite, quite a big role on the global economic stage. So what I love about the Netherlands is the ability of Dutch people to be resourceful and to innovate. And you see this from things like the way that we grow tomatoes to the way that we think about working part-time for parents, right? So there's always systems that we try to put in place to keep well-being and innovation at the core of what we do. From a global perspective, I think each country and each region has its own character and personality. And that's, again, where one of those 21st century skills like adaptability and cultural awareness is so key. It's how can I slot in and how can I understand this culture? How can I speak in a way and relate to the people where their needs are heard by me and I can innovate for them? So I think it always comes back to listening. Differences, your question was, what are the differences? I believe that at the end of the day, we're all most of us are here to create value. And perhaps Dutch people are slightly more direct than we maybe see across the US. But overall, the intention probably remains the same, and that's creating value.
I would just mention that from the Singularity University point of view, it's interesting to see which countries are hotspots for a pro-exponential tech. And we see that from where do we get the most alumni from? And the Netherlands was definitely one of the front-running nations in terms of really excitement about exponential technologies and about SU and so forth. So I'll just give that kudos to the people and culture there. Sharon, back to you.
So up next is Angela, and she is wondering if you can describe the role of AI as it relates to soft skills, learning, training, and in particular with mental and psychological health.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for your question, Angela. We don't want to talk about replacing the importance of a face-to-face and a human connection. So putting that fact aside, let's focus on your question, which is the role of AI in understanding that emotional health. How we've thought about it is by building the engagement that starts with how are you feeling? How are you doing today? And really looking at how the AI can help manage emotions, manage mindset, and manage the way that we turn up, the way that we're present. Through, for example, a breathing exercise. Breathing is huge, Angela. Breathing allows us to connect right back to earth. It allows us to ground ourselves, but most of us forget to do it. We forget to consciously breathe. So if you can have a reminder or an engagement or a lesson that helps you reconnect with some of the essence of your learning journey, that really allows you to absorb new knowledge better and to reconnect with your own passions. Because we know passion is so important when it comes to learning, right? Passion is such an important thing when it comes to thinking about how you turn up. So that's one piece of the relationship that we feel. The second piece is when we start getting a little bit deeper into the learning journey. So away from just the emotional part, but into the answers that you give the AI. So how are you responding? And this is so fun because if I were to say to AI, like I'm engaging with our product and I say, I love to sing, I will score rather low on sentiment. But if I say I love singing, I actually get a higher score on sentiment. So we really start to see where levels of excitement can translate into the way that we are shaping and submitting our answers back. And those answers, by the way, are all answers to questions like those, because I'm with Peter on the fact that we should be asking questions. How can this change the world? how does this have a critical impact on my decisions today? How can I
Right.
help other people with this problem? So for us, it's really about those questions and then getting into the nitty-gritty of the answer and training the AI that way so that your personal tutor really becomes engaged with who you are.
Awesome.
Great.
Let's go to the next question, Jerem.
Sure. So Mike says that learning new skills is important, but it's not always enough. It's also crucial to be able to showcase your skills and to prove that you have them. How can you demonstrate the proof of skills with these AI tutors? And do you think that proof of skills will remain important in the future of education?
I love your question. Awesome. I love your question. And that's actually something we were just chatting about a little bit earlier, you know, that product development piece where Peter had asked, you know, what was one of the changes that you've made? And we actually really resonate with you on that point. So tracking and assessing those 21st century skills, that's what we believe is a big value add, because then you can say, okay, I was, you know, scoring 2.6 on critical thinking. How can I refine my answers? How can you refine my own thought process to get myself to a 3.0? What does it take for me to be better at thinking critically about these global issues? Do I need to get more examples? Do I need to do more research? Do I need to speak to more people? So that way you're saying, all right, I clocked in at this score. Score is not really, it's not about the score necessarily, but just to be able to track your own development or your own growth. That part is key. And you can actually then say, okay, now I can actually demonstrate and show to myself, to my boss, to my future employer, here's the development that I've done in this X amount of time.
Excellent. Jerem?
Next is Simon, and he asks, how does your AI handle different languages and different cultures? For example, how does it adapt to the difference between a Kenyan child and a child in Sao Paulo?
That's a great question. So because the relationship is personal, it's about everybody's own engagement with their personal tutor. And we spent a lot of time thinking about this actually. And the way that we've trained the AI is to understand the essence of the answers more so than anything else, because that answer can have a critical, a critical mass to it, regardless of the source where it came from. And kids actually have amazing ideas. So, any kid writing an answer anywhere will have a great chance that their answer is quite creative. So for us, it's less about differentiating that way, because that kind of thinking can come from any source. Now, when you think about languages, we're actually able to deploy in over 100 languages. And that's really exciting, because what I've seen in my travels is gaps in access to learning materials due to language or cultural barriers.
Sure.
Great. So Jennifer has a more general question. She wonders what inspires you. What are some of your favorite novels, movies, books, or poets?
Jennifer, novels, books, movies, and poets, I think. Okay, novels, I'm reading a great book right now called All the Light We Cannot See, which I'm very excited about. It's beautiful so far. I'm on page 60, so you may want to give it a go, read about it. I am not a big movie watcher, but if I have to, I'm not big into movies, but if your root question was what inspires me, and I would say other people inspire me, their stories, where they want to go, what they feel is valuable, and how can we accelerate that for them. From a music perspective, there's just so much beautiful music. So Jennifer, if you're looking for a bandmate, if you happen to want to ever sing or collaborate on a song, you know where to find me, because music is definitely the way.
Perfect.
Great, we have a lot of questions about this. I'm just going to ask generally, how do the members sign up to be a beta tester for your AI? Is that possible at this point?
Yes, for sure. I love that question. Thank you so much. You can absolutely just email me, and that's jos@binova.ai. So please give us a shout.
So can we put that in the chat as well, Jerem? It's JOS@BEEN OVA. Is that correct?
Great. Yeah, we'll send that out as well. Great. Okay, up next is Lily, and she is on the way to starting her own company, and she's wondering if you could start this whole process from scratch, what would you do differently?
Great question.
Peter, do you have any insights you want to share? You've done it so many times. Tell us.
I mean, so I'll give a few pieces. Number one, if you're going to have a co-founder, you really want to make sure that that co-founder is someone that you respect, that you have had the hard conversations about who's CEO, what the ownership is. Do you guys want to build something that you're going to sell early or build for the lifetime? In other words, you really want to make sure that the DNA of that co-founding relationship is strong and vibrant, because a lot of companies fail because of a mismatch in vision or expectations, because people put off that conversation, like, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Wrong. Talk about it up front, and have the hard conversations early. And then you're going to spend more time with your co-founder or founding team than you are your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, family, if you're really on a startup. So make sure that you enjoy your time with that person or team. So that's fundamentally really important. And then the ability to listen to the data and the early feedback and be able to pivot rapidly. A lot of times what a company begins as is not what it ends as, and you need to not be stuck. You need the agility and creativity we talked about earlier, super important. And another part is focusing on building something that's got early revenues. I think the days of a big, bold vision and we're gonna raise 10, 20, 50, $100 million, and we'll get to revenue eventually. Being able to have a plan to generate revenue early, I think is important, because revenue is a great metric for value creation. And you can fool yourself, but you can't fool yourself if you're actually charging for a product. People will either buy it or won't buy it. So those are some just fundamental basics. And I think we'll do, one of the things I love doing is AMAs with our digital audience. And we're going to be doing a number of AMAs on your startups, on finding your co-founder, on early capitalization, on all those subjects. But, I love the stories, and Jos, I'll double down on the question just asked, which was, you're a year old, you have a co-founder that you respect and sounds like is an amazing partner. But if you can go back in time, would you have done anything different?
Thanks for this, Peter. And Lily, thank you for your question, and good luck on your venture. I'm super excited for you. I would love to hear in a year how things are going. So I agree with everything Peter said. And I would say that just the one thing is to just listen. Like, your co-founder is going to have hard days just like you do, but you choose your state of mind. You choose how you turn up for them. You choose whether or not you take their, if they have feedback for you, that's a gift that they're giving you. Treat the interactions with them as, I would say, just super valuable, because together you're taking a risk, and that's something to really honor. And nothing is too small to talk about, by the way. From, hey, I really don't like having a private conversation while we're waiting on a Zoom link for the rest of the team to join, to, I don't like it that you're always 10 minutes late, or to, hey, I love when you support my ideas in this way. Nothing is too small to talk about. So keep talking, because this person is hopefully going to share many successes and disappointments with you. Well, many successes with you, and then realistically some disappointments as well.
Great. Okay, so we have time for one more question, and it's going to come from Stephen. He asks, what, if any, ethical concerns do you see arising as AI becomes more involved in our everyday lives? Ultimately, do you think the positives will outweigh the negatives, and should we keep on moving forward with this technology?
You want to take your shot at for Stephen first, and I'll weigh in after?
Yeah, sure thing. Stephen, I thought we were like, wow, one question left. I thought you were going to ask me like, how are you enjoying your, time off during Corona? But you've really given us a tough one. No, Stephen, I think it's a great question that you're asking. And at the end of the day, I do believe that if we keep building AI that can propel us to sustainable education solutions, breakthroughs in healthcare, more strategic patterns to discover around how we age or how we live or what we consume, our mental health, then yes, for sure. I believe that it'll continue to outweigh good versus bad.
So let me add, Stephen, first of all, there's no on-off switch. I just want to put that up front. There's no velocity control or on-off switch. It's not like we have a choice of whether to develop AI. It is moving, in millions of parallel paths in millions of companies and research labs and researchers. And so it is happening. Our job is, like you just did, to ask the difficult questions and to steer guiding paths. One of the things that is a good analogy, back when I was at MIT and Harvard for my joint medical degree, I was in some of the cutting edge genetic research labs back then. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, and recombinant DNA, the ability to slice and dice DNA precisely for the first time ever, came online, and there was a lot of ethical questions about designer babies and such. And what happened was, rather than the government regulate it, the genetic engineers got together at a conference called the Asilomar conferences, and they created guidelines that they voluntarily agreed to. And it was that voluntary agreement by the leadership of all of this that led to sort of pathway that they all steered towards. So a lot of the most creative people hate being told what to do. And if you tell them don't do this, they'll do it in spite of you. So I don't know if any of you resemble those remarks, but so this same sort of Asilomar conferences are going on in AI as well. So I think that's a really important theme, that we're going to steer AI. I think AI is one of the most extraordinarily powerful tools for solving our problems, and it's a tool that I believe is going to solve more problems, and it will create. And I'm gonna take my role here and squeeze in one last question here. So, Jerem, give us one more.
Yeah, sounds good. I'd love to end on a little bit more of a positive note here with Alex. He asks, can you summarize in a few sentences what value you hope Binova provides to the world over the next decade?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. We hope that Binova AI provides people with a personalized tutor to teach and track their own 21st century skills development, allowing them to propel their entrepreneurship capabilities, to enhance how they collaborate, to design how they want to create, to build things that they believe are valuable. And that can radically replace and radically just rethink how we are currently educating, because our system of education was already not working. It's just that COVID-19 has brought that to the forefront. So over the next decade, we hope to be a part of a movement with great thinkers, great leaders that are willing to take on this challenge of completely rethinking global education.
And that is important, because one of the things I predicted in my book is this decade is going to be the decade where we see a complete disruption of healthcare and of the educational system. And I think it's just old, it's Baroque and Baroque, and I think we're going to see a transformation. I think this whole COVID-19 pandemic is going to accelerate that transition in both of those fields. So Jos, thank you. Before we leave, I want to tell everybody what's going on the rest of this week, because we have a full calendar for those of you in the digital community that want to take advantage of it. And again, welcome to our newest members. So tomorrow all day and Wednesday all day, we are going to be, I'm going to be co-hosting along with Salim Ismail, the EXO Global Summit. Sort of think of it as the Exponential Organizations Global Summit. And it's something which is, I think it's a $300 ticket, which is we've negotiated free for all Abundance Digital members. So please enjoy that. You can register in the app to get access to it. We have a really chock full schedule coming up for us. Let me just take a quick look. On the 16th, on Thursday, I'm sorry, no, on let's see, our next session here, on next Wednesday, the 22nd, I'm going to be doing a session with Tiffany Bova from Salesforce, one of the leading thinkers on software as a service. So that's going to be a blast with Tiffany, and just a lot more coming. We have 3 or 4 webinars next week as well. Anyway, a lot coming, but please join me tomorrow for the EXO Global Summit. You can register in the app. Let me just read my note here. Yeah, registration link is in the community app. And of course, you can just email the team if you have any questions. Jos, I wish you a beautiful evening. Thank you for joining us, and excited to be a user of Benova's AI capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
And Jerem, and to the digital community, have a beautiful day. See you guys soon.